welcome to Great Minds Tutorials, and this is your favorite tutor, Khodi. So today I'm very excited. We are starting a new chapter. We are starting a new thing. We're starting with advanced object-oriented programming. And we're going to be doing it in Java programming language, as always. And this is going to be our part one. So in our part one today, we're going to be doing what we call exception handling. So I'm going to do a user-defined exception handling, and I'm going to show you how I walk through. So the rest of the other information that I'm going to be doing is from the two previous playlists. The first playlist is basic Java programming, and the second playlist is your object-oriented programming. As you're studying this advanced object-oriented programming, then we're going to be continuing. So most of the stuff, if you do not understand them, just go through the playlist. They are labeled according to their episodes. So we're going to change it up a little bit. We're going to start calling them by parts. I'm no longer going to be calling them via episodes. And the other thing is that I'm thinking of introducing a new name. We're thinking of changing from Great Minds Tutorials, but it's under the umbrella of Great Minds Tutorial. We want to change the segment of programming and stuff. We want to change it to Great Minds Coding ZA. So if you want to search us on YouTube, just make sure you type at Khodiso, Kgodiso, no space, coding, Coding, at Khodiso Coding, Kgodiso Coding. And then you'll be able to see us. Will pop up as Great Minds Coding ZA or Great Minds Tutorials. It's one and the same thing. It's owned by the same people. So, okay, now what we're going to be doing today is that we're going to be creating a new project. So I'm going to go in with the new project. I'm going to go in with the new project. It's okay. Let's create a Java project. And let's name it as, can we have here, employee application. Okay. So this is what we were doing in object-oriented programming. I'm just going to continue. So the reason why I'm starting programming from scratch up until object-oriented programming is because there's a lot of stuff I want to share with you guys. And in order for me to be able to share those stuff, we need to build up on the knowledge so that whenever we start working with your APIs and all of those, you can be able to understand what exactly are we doing. And whenever we're going to start doing graphical user interface applications, you should be able to know what we're doing. I don't want to leave anyone behind. Please just like, share, comment, and subscribe. All right, so yeah, I'm going to create a backend class, and we're going to name it employee. So the packaging here, I'm going to say it's com.greatmindscoding.ww. So okay, I'm going to have it like that. So what I can do here is that I can give this attributes. So I'm going to give this a private string. I'm going to give him a name, surname, let's make it a string, employee ID. The reason why I'm making it a string is because the employee ID might be having characters. So I'm gonna make it a private. Then I'm gonna give them okay, but let's change it up. Let's switch it up a little bit here. Okay, but it's still fine. Still fine. Employee ID, and we're gonna give them a date. And we're gonna give them let's give them a date, and then we're gonna give them a date of employment. Okay, this is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna do a little bit of composition. So composition is when you are having it's when you are having a class which is being used as one of the attributes inside the other class. That is what we call composition. So those are my attributes. Okay. So now what I'm gonna do here, I'm gonna create a Java class and we're gonna call it date. So here we're gonna put it under that packaging, which is the com package. And then in here, what I'm gonna be doing is then I'm gonna then create a private int. The date must have a day. Private int, the day must have a month. And private int, the day must have a year placement. So that is all that we're gonna need from this side as our attributes. So yeah, I'm gonna do a constructor. So I'm gonna do a default one at first. Right click, insert code, go to constructor, do a default one. But inside my default, what I want to do is that I want to set everything to be default. So I'm gonna say this.day, I'm gonna assign it to a 0, and this.month, I'm gonna assign it to a 0 also. This.year, I'm gonna assign it to a 0 also. So okay. Yeah, I'm gonna have a parameterized constructor. Gonna come here and say insert code and say constructor. Say select all, then generate. Okay. So that is going to initialize each and every attribute of the class. And then I'm gonna have a getters and setters method. Right click, I'm gonna do the getters and setters method. And then I'm gonna select all here, generate. And at the end, I'm gonna do a toString method. If you do not know how to do this, go to my playlist where I'm doing object-oriented programming, and under where I am working with the creation of classes, I show all of those shortcuts. If it's new to you, no, this is not what I want to do. I want to do a toString method, insert code, toString method, and I'm gonna generate a toString method. I'm gonna override a toString method, and that toString method is just going to show me what has been stored currently inside there. So and then you'll see date supposed to be fine now. So it means date is that class. It handles the date only, and then we are having it this side. So yeah, and when we get here, we must have our constructors. So my default. So okay, here wherever I'm having my default, I'm gonna right click, I'm gonna insert code, then I'm going to insert via a constructor. Then I'm going to have to first create a default constructor. So okay, now let me do this. Do I have a default constructor here? Yes, I do have a default constructor, which is that one. So now what I'm gonna do here, I'm gonna say, then I have to say this.name is assigned to an empty string by default. I wanna reset. This.surname is assigned to an empty string by default. I wanna reset. This.employee number, it must be assigned to an empty string also. I want to reset. So now when it gets to the date of employment, I want to say date of employment is then assigned to a new date default constructor. I'm sure you have to understand this. You would most definitely have to understand that. Why? Because date, this side has got a default constructor. So I wanted to call that date like that. So now, when we get here, I want to do a parameterized constructor. It's going to give me something. I'll have to change it. So I do not want it to assign. I want the user, the side, to give in the dates. I want them to say int day, int month, and int yeah. So when I get here, I'm gonna have to remove this. Then I'm gonna say this is assigned to new date, and I'm gonna say day, month, and I'm gonna say year. Just like that. Can have that, can still not have it, still fine. Still gonna work perfectly fine. Okay, let's say this dot, fine, so that we can point clearly to it. All right, now I'm gonna do the getters and setters methods. Okay, so yeah, for the getters and setters method, insert code, getters and setters method, select all, generate. Then I'm gonna come and do a toString method. Okay, so yeah, for the toString method, right click, insert code, go to toString method, and I'm going to generate. Okay, then so far so good. I've done what I'm supposed to do in order for me to construct a concrete class. But here is what I want to introduce: exception handling. So for my exception handling, I would like to do it this way. If a user adds, they mustn't enter and they mustn't leave the name out. They must enter something which has got at least one character size. Your name must have at least one character. Even if your name is A, it must have at least one character size. We do not have a name which is an empty string. All right. Same for the surname. It must be at least one character. For the employment ID, we are having an employment ID in a company where the employment ID must be in between 3 numbers and 8 numbers. More than that must be an error. And then the date of birth also can never be a negative. It can only take positive numbers, but it needs to have restrictions. This to have restrictions for the number of days, you cannot have 54 as a number. For the day, your maximum day you can get is 31. For the months, your maximum is a 12. Your minimum should be a 1. And for the year, it can go as far as, yeah, it can go as far as anything, but it can never be a negative also. It can be anything. You can be placed anywhere in any year. Even in the future, this application should still be able to work. So, okay, now we need to get working on it. So now I'm gonna do 2 exception handling. Now, I'm gonna do them twice. So the reason being is because there's a class here which is composed inside another class. And when it's composed inside another class, what we are trying to do is that we are trying to make sure that even those dates, they are perfectly fine. Okay, but let's start this side. So now, so for me to create that, I'm gonna have a private helper method. And then I want it to return a Boolean. And then I'll say it's valid name. That is what I want this thing to check. But inside of it, it must take in a string, which is a name. Must test that name, which the user is going to send via encapsulation. So via the process of encapsulation, whenever we are sending from the front end class to the back end, it must first go through our exception handling. So exception handling just simply means error handling. We want to capture those errors that are gonna occur on runtime. And then now, okay. So what happens now is that I'm gonna have to have a Boolean, and I'm gonna say is valid. Then is valid. Let me then assign it to a false by default. By default. And then in here, I'm gonna say if so. Okay, in the previous section, we have, which is OOP, we have introduced what is an interface, what we call an interface. So now I'm gonna do an interface which is very necessary for me to do. So whenever you're working with exception handling, you must come here, right click, new interface. This is going to be employee. It's gonna be a data interface, data interface. So we're gonna do that. So now inside my data interface, what I'm gonna be doing is that I'm gonna be storing my final data, constant data. I'm gonna be declaring and initializing. So I'm gonna say final int, and this is gonna be the min size. So the minimum size of a string. I'm gonna have it as a 1. That should be your minimum size. 1 or greater than. So and then what I'm gonna do is that this will need to implement that interface. You need to come here, say implements the what? The employee data interface. Just like that. So now, so that we can get this. So this is what I want to check. Copy, come back here. Inside this is valid name. That's what I want to check. I want to check if the name which has been entered dot length is greater than or equals to the minimum length. If that then is valid, should then be turned into a true. So since guys, we are doing advanced object-oriented programming, I'm flying now. Concepts, I do not explain them. If you want to understand my concepts, go to the basic Java programming and also follow the series on object-oriented programming. Because now we're doing advanced stuff. So okay, now here we need to return is valid. Okay. What I'm gonna be emphasizing on is new concepts like this. This is valid. This I'm going to emphasize on an interface. What is an interface? I've explained it on the other side. Go back to the other side. Yeah. All right. So okay, now so okay, when you get here now, we are gonna get that the minimum size of a string is that one. Okay, now we need to then say that we want to do it also for the synonym. We want to get one for the synonym. So you're gonna say private, I'm lazy, copy paste, same concept. Okay, is valid here. We're gonna change, we're gonna say surname. Like that. And then in here, we're gonna put in a surname. And that should be surname here. Oh, it's SUR, surname. And then it's valid. That should be standard. It's the same. It tests the same way. So now, but when we get here, I wanna do if it's a valid employee ID So I'm gonna take here employee ID. So yeah, I'm gonna say if the employee ID ID.length. Now, yeah, I'm gonna say emp string, just to know that that is the employee string. Copy, come back here, final, int, paste it here. Then we said it can have a minimum of 4. Then we must also have a maximum, int, max, emp, string, can have a maximum of 4. So your ID must be in between 4 characters and 8 characters. Nothing less, nothing more. So now we want to come back this side. Then that is fine. And employee ID dot length should be less than or equals to max imp string. So that's the maximum. Then we're gonna say is valid should be true. Then we're gonna return is valid. There we go. So now we're gonna go up. This is where you apply them. Where you are setting your employee ID and where you are setting your employee ID and so forth. So let me do some changes. Yeah. Let me do this. Let me get here. Let me put it properly. Let me say date here. Let me take it back. So yeah, we're gonna say date of employment. So yeah, we're gonna say this is assigned to date of employment. Okay, it's fine. All right. So okay, now we're coming here to set name. So in your Mitita method, which is your set name, set name, set employment ID, then we're going to apply exception handling. But before we can do that, we need to come here, right click, new class. We call it employee exception. This is an exception class, the one that is going to be needed. So now inside the exception class, what you do when you get here, you say it extends. That's the first thing that you need to do. Exception. And now what you need to do is that you need to do the parameterized constructor. Okay, the one that must take in a string message. This one. So, but yeah, I'm gonna specify. Okay, but it's fine. Even if I do not specify if it's a, but this is the error message. The error message that is gonna pop up. This, it's supposed to be your error MSG. Let me specify so that you understand what goes into here. So in here, MSG. So this, what it's gonna do, it extends the exception class. So it's gonna send this to the parent class. So exception class is a predefined class. It's not a user-defined class, meaning that it exists already in Java programming. There's no need for you to reprogram it. So how it works is that it was the one that is gonna be responsible to throw, try, and catch your errors. So okay, now I'll explain the throwable and also the trying and catching. So we try and catch in the main class, and in the backend class, we only throw. We only throw. We try and catch in the main class. So, but you'll see it whenever we are doing it practically. So, okay, now once we do that, we need to go back to our data interface. Then we need to give it an error message. So we need a final. We need a final string. And then we'll need an error message for name, which is gonna say, please enter a name of at least one character. Do not, okay, let's say don't leave it empty. Okay. So that one is for the name. Then I'm gonna need an error message for the surname. Okay. So this one is for the surname. Okay. So here we're gonna specify that this is for the surname also. And I'm gonna do the last one. The last one that I'm gonna do is for the employee number. So for the employee number, I'm gonna say please enter an employee number of at least 4 characters and not more than 8 characters. So we're saying please enter an employee number of at least 4 characters and not more than 8 characters. And do not leave it empty. It's gonna catch an error if we leave it empty. So yeah, that should be it. So then you go back here. Before you can set, you need to check. You need to say if you say is valid name, you have written it down there. Then you pass name. Then if that's a true, then we're going to assign the name like that. Else, we wanna throw a new employee. Now we are handling the exception. Then we need to give an error message. So the error message that we're gonna give for the name, it's error message whenever it's a name. This is the one that is gonna pop up. Then we're just gonna put that here. Then it needs to throw. So we're gonna add a throws clause up there, which is this. Hence, this is what I was talking about. Do not try and catch in the backend class, only throw the exception. So it's going to point it towards that exception class. Then the exception class is going to extend the super class, which is exception. Then it's going to pass that error message, which that error message that has been stored is this one that please enter. So it's going to pop up that error message to the user-friendly message. That's it. All right. Now we're doing for the name, surname. So you don't do anything for the getters, for your accessor methods. You only deal with your mutator methods. The very same thing. You'll start with an if statement. Your if statement will test the is valid. So is valid surname. That one, it exists down there. That helper method that we have done, but it takes in a parameter which is surname. Then if that is true, then we're going to set. Else, we're going to throw a new exception. Else, we want to throw new employee exception. So inside here, we're going to put in the surname error message. We come back here. We take in the surname error message, copy, go back here, paste. But in this case, we need to put in the throws exception. Let me move around this so that I can see if there's no error. All right, let me do it like that so that I can see clearly. Okay, there's no error. All right, so now we're gonna do for the set employee ID. So in this case, for the set employee ID, what we're gonna be doing here is that we're gonna say throws employee exception. Okay, that is fine. And then we're gonna test the if statement also. Same thing. If is valid employee ID, and we are putting in the employee ID. That's what we are testing. Then if that is true, we're gonna assign. Else, if those requirements are not met, we're gonna throw a new exception. So it should throw a new employee exception. And then the new employee exception that is gonna throw, it's gonna throw it using that error, which is the error EMP. Let me take the whole thing, copy, go back to employee. That's what we're gonna put. So, okay. Now, yeah, on the parameterized one, we're going to force it that before it can assign, it must go via the exception handling route. So how do we do that? We're going to use the set method to assign. So yeah, we're going to change this method. When you're now dealing with the exception handling, these methods, they change, these ones. We replace them after doing the exception handling down there. Then we're going to say set name, and then we put in the name inside there. We're going to say set surname, and we're going to put the surname inside there. And we're going to do the set employee ID, and we're going to put in the employee ID in there. And we're going to say set date, date of employment. This one I'm working backwards because remember, I haven't done exception handling for the date, but we're going to see when we get that side. So here I'm going to say date of employment. Then we're going to say date of EMP, employment. And when we get here, it's gonna tell me that I must add a throw clause or surrounded try and catch. Remember my rule. Do not try and catch in the back end, only try and catch in the front end. Why? Because that is where you are not going to be creating your objects. This side, you're not creating any objects. So we're going to add the throws. So this one, it's going to tell us that, oh, no. This one is just spelling error, date of employment. As soon as we do exception handling this side, it's going to force us to throw also the date exception. So now we are done with the exception handling. That's all you need to do in order for you to do exception handling. What we did, we just did this. This is what we changed. We also changed the set name. We also changed the set employment ID. And we also added this 3 methods. Is valid name, is valid surname, is valid ID. Then now we go to the date, which is another different story. So now we need to do the very same thing here, handle the exception. So we're going to say private, we're going to say boolean, boolean, and then we're going to say is valid day. That's what we're going to do inside there. And then we're going to say boolean, boolean is valid is then assigned to a false by default. Same thing. So if you follow this, I'm doing the very same thing over and over again. Right, now I'm going to scroll down a little bit. And then I'm going to say if the day, oh, yeah, I need to remember to give it an int, which is the day. So I'm going to say if the day, which is an integer, is greater than or equals to a 1. We don't have a day which is not a 1, but that one, I don't want to do it there. I have an interface which deals with that. So yeah, I need to come back and say final int, and then I'll say min day number, meaning number of days. It's gonna be a 1. And then I'm gonna have another one which is gonna be final int max day number of days 31. You don't have more than 31 days in a month. There is no month which has got more than 31 days. The maximum you can get is 31. So that is what we're trying to control. That is the error that we're trying to control. So that someone doesn't put something outside there. If you put a 0, there's no day number 0. The month starts from the 1st. It can end on the 31st. Think about that every time. So now let's try and do it for, I'm just trying to make sure that my charger is plugged in. Let's try and do it for final int min month number. It's 1. Final NaL int max month number 12. Not more than that. So okay, that one is still fine. So now we have a final. So think about it. This is just logic. Int minimum year zero. A year can never be negative. Can be any year, but as long as it's not a negative. That is what we want to think about when we get the side. So then now we're going to say here, this must also implement, this is going to implement, it implements the employee data interface. There we go. Then we go inside the Then my if statement is surrounded around that. Okay, yeah. If the day is greater than or equals to the minimum, copy, paste, and again, it mustn't be more than. Day is less than or equals to it mustn't be less than or equals to the maximum then is valid should be assigned to a true. Then we return so I'm gonna copy this, paste. I'm a little bit lazy. I'm a lazy programmer. So, but when you are lazy, you get to save time. So is valid month. So yeah, I'm gonna take a min month, max month. So I'm just gonna get here. It just changes here. Month. Even here, it just changes and becomes a month. The rest of the other things, same. Paste it for the last time. Be lazy for the last time. It's a valid year. Okay. So in here is what I've forgotten. Being lazy sometimes it doesn't help. Because you'll forget to change other stuff when you copy and paste. But make sure whenever you're working on them, change. Okay. For year, it's also not a day. But for this one, it's just minimum year. Capital letters. Let's check. Oh, it's just minimum year. So this is not the. Yeah, it's just like that. So okay, this one is just greater than or equals to. It mustn't be a negative. It must be a positive number. That's how you're gonna control it. So yeah. Yeah, we must get a month. MNT. MNTH is fine for month. Yeah, I'm gonna have an MNTH for month. And then I'm gonna have an MNTH for month. So we are done with that. As I've done on the other side, you'll see me, I'm gonna do the very same thing. I need to go to the mutators set day. So I'm gonna test it with an if statement. I'm gonna say if is valid day, putting in the day, set it to be true, else I'm gonna throw new employee exception. Let me just quickly check something here. Okay, so I'm gonna throw in a new exception. So I'm gonna have a final string, an error. So I'm gonna say day error. I'm gonna say please enter a day that is between, please enter a valid day. Then we're going to specify that we want it to be in between 1 to 31. A valid day in a month. Okay, should be sufficient. We're going to have a final string month error. Then we're going to say, please enter a valid month in a year, and that should be between the number 1 to the number 12. There we go. Semicolon. Final year error. Then we're going to say please enter a valid year. A year can never be negative. Pa, pa. We're moving it. All right, so come back here. This is a day error. There we go. Then we must throw that for the month. I'm gonna be lazy. Copy, remove this, paste. Yeah, it's gonna change and become a month. Yeah, it's gonna be a month. Yeah, it's gonna be a month. Yeah, it's gonna be a month error. Okay, we're gonna throw pa. I'm gonna be lazy for the last time. Come in here on the setup method or the mutator method. So yeah, it's gonna be a year. Small letters. Remember, programming is case sensitive. Year. EAR. Aha. Ziakala Gemanj. Meaning that it's going down. Translating it out from my language, it means it's going down. And it says Ziakala Gemanj. That's a South African expression we use when things are now getting heightened and the heat is going up. But I know you guys are gonna understand this. Okay, so now when we get here, we are done. And then the last thing that we're supposed to do just to fly through this is just use your set. So here we're gonna say set small set day. Then we're gonna put in a day inside there. And we're gonna do the set month. We're gonna put in the month in there. Just like that. And then here we're gonna do the set year. And then we're gonna put in the year inside there. So look at what I'm doing here. I'm not doing anything for my default constructors, both this side and on the other side. Be careful of that. You do not touch the default constructor because it's not taking any values from the user. So now I'm gonna go back this side. Then I'll need to throw. Oh no, it's already throwing the employee exception. So it's perfectly fine. So if it throws the employee exception, It's perfectly fine. So to set this one, let's come here and say throws. Exception. So it's always good to take it to the other class and test it, but it's fine. Then everything should be fine for now. Whenever you put it here, it's gonna bring it back here. Then it's going to send it to the date, and inside the date, it's gonna have to go and test it first before it can actually come up with something. And there you have it, guys. I'm very excited. That is how you do. When I started this code, it was a little bit light. Now it's dark. It shows that we took time to go through the theory, but that is how you do exception handling. And in the next video, I'm gonna be continuing and showing you how we try and catch in the main. I don't want this video to be too long. And okay, so we're gonna do it in the next video. And that is it from me. Till the next time we drop, please remember to like, share, comment, and subscribe. And cheers.